Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today, my guest is Ola Wolny. First, a couple of announcements. We're going to be finish up filming this weekend for Doors of Perception. If you'd like to help with our fundraiser, you can visit supportfkn.com, or we have links in the description. Anything is greatly appreciated. Also, check out our first film, The Forbidden Documentary, Occult Louisiana. It's available on Tubi. If you'd like to help in any other way with production for our upcoming film, email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome Ola Wolny. For 15 years, she has held various operational, engineering, and business positions in the oil and gas industry. And from a very young age, she was drawn to sacred wisdom, astrology, and mysticism. In 2017, she was led to a job in the Arctic Circle, which got her involved with local shamans and healers who passed their teachings to her and set her on her path to help others reclaim their power and sovereignty. Ola, welcome. How you doing?
Hi, Chris. Very well. Welcome to everybody. I'm doing really, really well. It's been a bit of summer in the Arctic as well. So as you can see, we get that too. So yeah, I can't complain for sure.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming on. I've really been looking forward to getting your perspectives into not only the nature of our human experience, but what may be occurring on a metaphysical level during this era of human history. And you've studied Gnostic texts, the Vedas, Enuma Elish, Emerald Tablets, the Kabbalah, and you've also had very profound spiritual experiences that have led you to your understandings. So we've got a lot to get to, but before we do, this is your first time on. Let the audience know a little more about yourself and what led you down your path.
Oh gosh, starting from the boring stuff. So a little bit about myself. What people may be a little bit surprised by is that my background, my sort of matrix, system, corporate background is oil and gas. So I worked for, oh gosh, about 12, 13 years in oil and gas. I'm an oil and gas engineer by background. So I worked a little bit offshore, mostly onshore. So very much that kind of logical brain mind, someone who kind of uses a lot of critical thinking, scrutiny, etc. I'm no longer associated with that path, but I remained within the energy business, as you can imagine, right? But a little bit on a different side. So I probably by training and by nature, I tend to apply that kind of way of analyzing, thinking to anything that I look into. Having said that, I've noticed, I've learned, and I've very much benefited from absolutely integrating the very much intuitive, more sort of feminine way of perhaps understanding things or looking into things and putting the dots together. So that's pretty much my background. I worked in the corporate environment for a very, very long time. Probably around, the pandemic time was when I've decided, or perhaps there was no other way than to come out of the closet with these kind of things that we will be talking about today. So the sort of system path is pretty much closed for me. It is very much closed for me, and I've started walking towards where my sort of soul's been very much calling me towards. I live in the Arctic, in Norway, in the north, in the very north of Norway, very, very far from Oslo. So right now we get the polar day. Here we get a full nice Arctic summer. So I've been also working with bringing people here for the past year and a half, bringing people here to experience this region. Very, very special energy, very special experiences. This is definitely a place that has transformed me inside out. It has prepared me for where I am right now, even though I didn't know at the time. So you know, there is no describing this, to be absolutely honest. I've been a little bit around the world. I've been to places that are considered sacred, or places that are considered of high energy or special energy, and quite frankly, I haven't really experienced that in many of those places. But the type of energy, the type of spiritual context that you might experience here in this region where I am is second to none. And I'm speaking from my personal experience, but not only. I'm speaking from experience of people who have been here. And you know, it changed their lives, and some of them have become so hooked that they even started to move here to this region. So that's absolutely amazing. So this is the sort of these are the things that I've moved into, and you know, never been happier.
Wonderful, great introduction. The more I look into metaphysical, esoteric topics, the more I realize the less I really know when it comes to a larger scale of understanding, because the more I learn, it opens up new pathways and new doors and new possibilities. And I'd like to start with your understanding of our human experience, why we're here, what we are, and our purposes. And I've come to the understanding that each and every one of us does have a soul mission here. And there is also a matrix construct that serves many purposes, but it also has effects on us on our daily basis, like making us forget our mission, making us forget where we come from, having these very strong dualities, light and dark. And then we go into possibilities of reincarnation, archonic forces that may whisper in our ears at times and try to steer the collective in certain ways. And then, of course, the time period that we're in now, that to me seems like a very special time. There's very interesting things that we're witnessing unfolding. So let's start there. It's a big question, but what are we doing here?
Oh my God, indeed, a massive, massive question. I could probably be here
Hey,
till tomorrow.
We'll take our time with it. We'll dissect
it. So one more thing that I probably owe to add about my path and where I came from, and sort of how did I even find myself speaking about these topics, is that, you know, for my whole life, it's been over 40 years, I've been very, very drawn to astrology, numerology. And, you know, I know that there are negative connotations and a lot of people get turned off, but please bear with me, because like I say, you know, by background, I'm an engineer. So I am very much no bullshit, no nonsense. So when I took this path, I wasn't really taking it in this kind of, you know, unicorns and rainbow kind of approach. I studied ancient texts, as you mentioned, in the context of looking for parallels, looking specifically for some kind of information about the zodiac. And guess what? Surprise, surprise, it is everywhere. It is everywhere. For those with the eyes to see and ears to hear, the information is everywhere. It is in the Hermetic text. It is in the Gnostic text. It is in the Vedic text, Enuma Elish, so the Sumerian creation myth. It is in every single mythology of literally every culture. So whether that's Norse mythology, which is very obviously very much, I like to call upon Norse mythology a lot, because that's where I happen to live right now. And but not only. And when you study all these accounts, you see a very clear correlation between all of these stories, all of these accounts, and information specifically pointing and describing some kind of mechanism. We call it zodiac, right? We call it an astrology, numerology being just the ways of interpretation of this mechanism. You see, because this is where I would like to go a little bit deeper into. This is what I've discovered based on these texts, and of course they have been tampered with. They have been a lot of them, there's been an intervention, especially from the patriarchal agenda, to hide certain things. Mythology is critical. Mythology has been also, unfortunately, very often inverted, very often tampered with, and we cannot find the original, or we cannot see the original versions to be fully available right now in the current times. However, we know, rule of thumbs, sort of switch everything by 180 degrees and you might get a little bit of truth there. So having analyzed these texts, there is a very, very clear, undeniable picture that seems to emerge, which is the Earth, whatever it is, whatever the shape, whatever the size, the Earth seems to have been at some point in time, and of course we can call upon Sitchin, we can call upon the Vedas, right? And we can sort of draw a bit of a timeline here. The Earth has been invaded by another race or races. I would argue that it's obviously multiple. It's not one race. These are the ones that in the Sumerian context get called Anunnaki, or the gods, or the archons of the Gnostic texts. These are the ones present in every mythology. So we have, obviously, for example, the Viking or the Norse mythology. We have the gods of the Norse mythology, and very, very interesting that the pantheon of these gods corresponds very, very nicely to the Roman mythology, to the Greek mythology. And if you look into the Sumerian gods, then there is obviously a parallel as well. So clearly there's been presence of some other civilization here that came with pretty malevolent intentions, and they have created certain structure, very advanced technology, very advanced use of artificial intelligence, something that we are only beginning to scrape the surface. We are in our human understanding. We have no idea what they have been using. We're talking about technology used tens of thousands years ago that obviously precedes us by thousands, if not, 100,000, millions of years, who knows? So what we see in the ancient texts, and what we see and what we hear being referred to as the firmament, as the sort of construct above, and the gods, seem to be literally the very works of the ones who once upon a time came here. They enslaved the ones that they met here. And of course, a lot of those stories also echoed in the Sumerian tablets. So that interpretation is that goes even a little bit further. So-called creator gods, right? The ones that later call themselves creators, as if they were the ones who created human race. That is absolutely incorrect. That is absolutely untrue. Of course, you would have the god usurpers, the race that wants to assert their dominance here, changing the history, right? I mean, we know that history has been changed, and we've been lied about pretty much everything. So the narrative has been changed. The narrative has been developed in a way that serves the victor, not the oppressed. The humanity.
Well, I want to explore that for a minute if we can. You said that the Anunnaki, although we hear it through many other researchers and ancient texts that it's interpreted that they tinkered with some hominid DNA and maybe combined it with extraterrestrial or whatever kind of DNA that they contain, and that's where humanity comes from. But you're saying that's a deception.
I think that what would happen here is a lot of experimentation with human DNA and with DNA of other species. So I believe that, we're dealing with a mixture of different stories, some of them referring to, probably, some kind of slave race being developed for the very purpose of serving those gods, those archons, right? Or perhaps fulfilling very specific, simple tasks. However, what they have absolutely erased in their stories is the fact that when they came here, this place wasn't empty. This place was already inhabited. And literally, if we look into the galactic history, it seems that there's been certain wars and conflicts that were happening before anything even happened on Earth. And that's what we find in mythology. This is where we find, you know, the myths of everything that's happening in the sky. So for example, constellations that are depicting a warrior shooting at the maidens, right? And Pleiades being involved, the constellation of Vega, Lyra, right? All of these constellations, the Great Bear, so the Big Dipper or the Little Dipper, depending how you call them. All these stories, you know, these are not fairy tales. These are not fables that happen to be the same across different cultural geographies. These are remnants of some kind of history that people that obviously oral tradition, try to preserve. And if we are able to investigate a little bit into these stories, but perhaps switch off the mind, because you see what I have noticed, and probably you know that yourself, right? That there is a lot of so-called scholars into this topic around the world, and they come up with all sorts of interpretations, and they write books about it. But if they could switch off that you know, mind for a minute, they could just possibly find the answers that they are looking for, because these answers are already there. These answers are coded into fairy tales, into mythology. They are coded into a lot of ancient texts that the problem is a lot of people have been failing to interpret. So the story is pretty much there. And if you know the rule of thumb, which is everything in this world is pretty much inverted, right? So the hero or the one who's the oppressor becomes the hero, right? And the oppressed ones become the victims, become the one that needs to be in some way persecuted. Well, that's the world that I think everybody knows, that's the world that we have come to live in. So in that context, absolutely. Did they create the current human race? I'm gonna strongly disagree that no, they have not. Have they been experimenting and doing all sorts of DNA interventions? Absolutely, yes. Have they done this to us? Of course. I mean, look at our DNA. How many strands of DNA do we have, which is called junk? And the only active ones are two strands, right? I mean, that doesn't sound like a regular nature kind of evolution, right? That sounds like somebody tampered with the code. So obviously our DNA have been disabled. Majority of our DNA has been disabled. Why? What's in that DNA that was so inconvenient, threatening, that had to be put offline? And you know what we are left with is literally the kind of basic function of survival, biology, etc., right? And yet you see, this is why we piss them off so much, because even though they switched off pretty much everything to a point of being able to even maintain the system sort of online, right? And we still carry that spark within us that sooner or later we're starting to put everything together, put the picture together.
So you said that these beings were able to somehow place the entire planet under this advanced technological matrix system.
Correct.
If we look back through a lot of these ancient texts, it would seem like humanity has been reset multiple times. Much of the reasonings that are mentioned in some of these texts are that the gods were not happy with humanity or the way that humanity was going, so they decided to do a reset multiple times.
Absolutely. But you have to ask yourself, what kind of God? I mean, give me a definition of a God, right? Because a lot of people like the word God and they use it thinking that the definition is very benevolent. It's this kind of all-loving, benevolent being, right? But is that right? I mean, look at the God of the Old Testament. That's got nothing to do with benevolence. That is a psychopath. That is a jealous psychopath who loves sacrifices made of what? Animals and humans. Yeah. When you look into the cultures, South America, right? And we find out the Aztecs, they were doing, they were primitive because they were doing sacrifices with humans or with maidens, with women, right? Human sacrifices, they were primitive. You have to ask yourself why. Was it their idea or was it the expectation of the gods? Who are the gods? What kind of race, right? Otherwise known by the reptilians, by the Draco, right? By the Anunnaki is just it's a term that comes from specifically that geography and the language used there, which just means as simple as Anunnaki, the ones who came from above down onto the earth. So it is not the name of a race, it is a name of basically what happened, right? So if we call them Archons, if we call them Anunnaki, if we call them the reptilians, Draco, however we want to call them, and mind you, Archons, right? The word Archon in Greek translates into ruler. The Lord. The Lord, ruler. And how is the Bible written, right? The Lord said this, the Lord said that, right? So who are we referring to? Who are we really referring to? We're referring exactly to them. And they're not our friends. Of course there were resets because at some point people would catch on, right? People would get to a point where there was a danger. There was a danger to those in power. Specifically in the ancient texts, and you can trace it back into the Rig Veda, which is the oldest one, so sort of around 12,000 years ago, around sort of 10,000 BC. You can see that in Enuma Elish as well. So the creation myths are very often the same in the Norse mythology, are talking about certain time when this firmament, the dome, has been put in place, the moon shows up. If you look into the Enuma Elish, of course, there is this conflict between Tiamat and Marduk. And in the outcome of that conflict, he fashions a new version of the sky. He fashions a new version of sort of reality. What does that mean? What does that mean? What does it mean in the Hermetic text, when the Hermetic text so openly and beautifully describe that Atum, which is their name for the god, for the creator, Atum created the planets, created the moon, and they were corresponding to certain attributes of the gods. What does that mean? It means that this construct, again, very advanced technology, is operating based on frequency. This is frequency controlled construct, whereby the very energetic nature of the planets, of the stars out there has been tampered with. There's been like a lens put up above us, otherwise called as a firmament, right? Otherwise known as a firmament. Something has been put above us to literally put us in a quarantine here on Earth. It's in a way, it kind of disconnected us from that cosmic context. It keeps us, right? And the moon, very, very important moment when the moon shows up, because moon shows up with a mission, right? The moon is not a natural satellite. The moon shows up in the sky. So the moon is placed into the sky around 10,000 BC with a job. And that is frequency control of this realm. So these planets plus the moon, they end up sort of working as a system based on frequency control. And you see, this is the reason why I mentioned I used to study astrology and numerology, but not as some kind of entertainment side hustle, but specifically because this is part of this construct. This is very much part of the construct. You've mentioned in the introduction that we have this free will and we can just, live out our life according to our mission. Do we have a free will? Because somehow looking into astrology and numerology, too much in our life is predictable. As in predictive astrology and numerology, from whatever geography, the Chinese, the Greek, whatever you use, they have been spot on for sort of, take a random person and just run their code. Why is it like that? Well, I just it just slipped my mouth literally now, because there is a code. When we incarnate here, and Hermetic texts talk about it, that this firmament creates a barrier so that a human, the person who lives here, will be incarnating, will be tossed between heaven and earth indefinitely. What does that mean? It means there is a mechanism in place which after death sort of captures the soul, and it's like a recycling factory, it sends it back down. So you cannot escape this realm. You cannot leave and go wherever you want to go. You are in an artificial way controlled after death and after birth as well. So that this plane becomes like it's like a recycling factory of souls. Why? Because nothing about this realm, nothing about this prison that they created, these races created, is obviously for our benefit. This is an energy harvesting machine. So literally, what is the fall of consciousness? The fall of consciousness is the fact that after so many incarnations, right, so many times that the human was tossed up and down, guess what? They, as you mentioned before, they go through that process of wiping out their memory, and they come back here and they get traumatized. Their soul gets shattered into even more pieces. They get traumatized. Their life is pretty much, their fate, as they say, is predetermined. Okay. And the life, I mean, look at most of us, right? I mean, okay, we can say that we thrive, this and that, but majority of the world, people are struggling. Does anybody want to be struggling? No, people want to live a happy, peaceful life. But that's not the case. Why? Well, because we have a gang of psychopaths above us. Those people from those beings from those races, no, not here. They're not interested in being here. They used to be in the past. This is why we have so many accounts of extraterrestrial presence in the past. But in the current times, we have more of the middlemen put in place, right? So the people on top, the people whose names we never hear on TV, right? They are the ones who are the brokers, right? Who would have been the brokers for the last sort of several thousands of years. So this is the picture that we are dealing with.
The way you were describing the planets and the stars and the moon sounded like a circuit board that has all these energetic connections, and from what you described, the moon is connected to our reincarnation cycle. Is that right?
Yes, the moon is connected to that in a sense that, based on, if we look into mythology, if we look into what we can extract from fairy tales and from legends, from the sort of oral tradition of a lot of cultures in their original teachings, Native American, even the Sami people of the North, here where I am, in their original teachings, all of them, they guard against the moon. The sun is good, the sun is benevolent, and mind you, never masculine. The sun in the original tradition is always feminine. The moon is never feminine, and the moon is never positive. So these people, these traditions, try to tell us something about something negative about the moon. And even where I come from, right, my tradition is obviously Eastern European. In our tradition, we say that the moon, like, avoid the full moon, don't go out, don't sort of interact, don't look too much at the full moon, because the moon steals the soul. We even have a legend. Where I come from, we have a legend, for anybody watching, or maybe Polish speakers. Jan Twardowski, the legend of Jan Twardowski, the man who loses his soul, and a woman tells him, if you want to regain your soul, you need to journey to the moon. Obviously not physically, but there is a certain alchemical sort of context there. But so the moon, always negative. The moon is linked to the process of harvesting the soul, because based on the stories that I've sort of got to and put that together, the moon is literally the white light, the end of the tunnel that you see when you die. So you're being sort of called, right? You've been in a way, you sort of gravitate towards the moon, because the moon specifically is part of that recycling of the soul system. So the moon is going to be taking a very active part in that whole process of after death, sort of get the soul in, flip it, send it back. Right, so that's what seems to be one of the main roles of the moon, not the only one. Major frequency control upon our pineal gland and upon our energy centers is steered from the moon.
Now, from what you said so far, it seems like what we're experiencing is rather hopeless when it comes to anything outside of this reality. If we are constantly recycled into this, is there something outside that we would understand as source or God? Is there a home for our souls? Is what we're experiencing on some level being allowed?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that so far everything sounds pretty gloomy, but hopefully there will be time to sort of get to the end of the world, which is what we need. And that is the positive. That is the positive, and the hopefully something that gives people hope and something to look forward to. But absolutely, in the context of what you've asked. So when you look back, when you look into every creation text, even including the Bible, including the Kabbalistic creation texts, which have been tampered with, I cannot stress that enough. They've been tampered with, because in patriarchy and those creator gods that have called themselves creator gods, males, right? There's been a switchover from creation being feminine, which it still is, because I mean, look at women who gives birth, right? I mean, who gives birth? But we somehow took the bait on the trick of being told, being convinced that creation is masculine. And if you look into those ancient texts, if you look to the original versions of the ancient texts, and if you understand the alchemical interpretation of those texts, original creation is feminine. So there is a very beautiful story of I don't want to call it female, because we're not looking for personification of anything here. We're talking about certain very loving, very benevolent, beautiful, creative force. If that helps. I myself, whether we call it source, however we want to call it, I don't really care. But we are part of it, as in we are the spark of that loving creation. And the problem why these races are even, that they've done what they've done here on Earth, is because they have totally disconnected. They've disconnected themselves from that creative force, the degeneration of that has been that degeneration on a sort of emotional level, spiritual level in those races has been so far advanced that they have lost that connection, and there's kind of no way back, you know. In a way, there's no way back. It's so I would say, you know, let's not look for something outside of us, as in there must be an external God, there must be an external source that's going to save us, or, you know, something to look up to, because mind you, we are very, very programmed into believing that something holy, something sacred is outside of us, and there is a personification into a masculine figure, right? So what we tend to do, okay, if it's not masculine, then let's replace it with a feminine. So let's, you know, then let's call it a mother, yeah, a loving mother. But how about we transcend that as well, and sort of look at it in a more of a context that perhaps this universe is just filled with the highest vibration of creation. Women are fragments, literally, right? Females are fragments of that, so that they could bring more of that loving vibration into any world. They are the ones who are birthing universes, right? That's just our function. That's how this is, you know, this is not a competition. This is just how we are constructed. So perhaps it's enough to look to ourselves, to remember our own nature, to remember that we are those seeds of something much, much bigger, and that power that we hold within us, all of us humans, you know, we have been under an illusion that led us to forget this power. So I would probably argue for, or perhaps that would be my view of things. Is it hopeless? Is the situation hopeless? Never. It's never been hopeless, and it has never been more hopeful than now. And the reason for that is precisely because what's prophesied for the times now, so-called the end of the world, is literally upon us. And, you know, how do we know that? We know that through interpretation of the apocalypse, the apocalyptic signs. We know that through the interpretation of Ragnarök, the Norse mythology, end of the world, right? So every culture, again, every geography has some kind of myth or prophecy that's talking about something in the future. But the most promising thing is that we are able to put a timeline on it. How? Well, few things. In the apocalypse, specifically, there is a very concrete celestial event described. A woman clothed in the sun with the crown of 12
the alignment
stars
2017, was it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. That's the alignment of 2017 in autumn. So the sign in the apocalypse that describes the beginning of this event has already happened. So tick, right? And Vatican even confirmed it back then. On top of that, you know, if that's not good enough, Cathars, they have their prophecies, which talk specifically about a window of 8 years between, and if you do the math on that prophecy, the window is from 2017 to 2025, when certain changes, this is the sort of energy window that certain things will be happening here on Earth that will sort of facilitate and enable a massive transformation here on Earth. And if you look to Ragnarök, and if you look to what starts Ragnarök, if you look to the, but again, if we try to interpret that only by, you know, using the mind and the sort of logic, that's going to be a failure. That's going to be a massive failure, and the whole story of the end of the world becomes just like a tale, you know. But do we really believe that these people back then, had nothing better to do but just come up with those tales, and everybody in different geographies coming up with the same tale? It's just too much of a coincidence. So again, looking into the Norse mythology, we get even a little bit more information, which is directly confirming what the apocalypse is saying. The woman in the sky is taking the moon under her feet. The moon has been ruling for all these thousands of years. Suddenly, it's at the feet. Of course, it is in the celestial event, as in moon leaving constellation Virgo, so it is at her feet. But there is a deeper meaning, because as above, so below. So there is a deeper meaning, deeper alchemical meaning of that specific situation. Which again, Ragnarok, what Ragnarok says, the Ragnarok, the story of Ragnarok, it says that Ragnarok commences when Uroboros, when the snake biting its own tail finally bites through. What is the ring? What is this? What is that snake representing? Snake biting its own tail, things going over and over and forever and forever. Samsara, the wheel of samsara, the reincarnation forever, over and over. Or the zodiac circle, right? Zodiac above us, the 12, not the 13, the feminine 13, but the 12. So that at Ragnarok breaks. What does that mean? Well, that's amazing news, because it means that something is happening. We're being aided by some cosmic context that plays itself out. Okay, please understand that this is no new agey blabber. These are prophecies from the native culture. These are prophecies from the Cathars. These are the signs from the apocalypse. We just need to know how to interpret them. So we're being aided in the cosmic context, as in, you cannot stop the ocean. And those gods, those archons, they know that they cannot do anything to stop this cosmic context. So what are they trying to do? They're trying to do everything in their power to extend, or to perhaps make it impossible for humans to benefit from these cosmic scenarios, from the context, right? That we are experiencing right now. How? Maybe by trying to play with our DNA, which is obviously the story of the last few years.
Right. Well, this I want to touch on this for a second. Since you said that, you also mentioned earlier that we may not have as much free will as we think we do, but I think this is an indication that we do, because there was an opportunity for us to participate with this experiment or opt out of it. Now, if you're saying that we didn't have free will, it was always set in our programming that we wouldn't be opting into this thing. But along the same lines of this, if this is the end of the control system, of course they would want to try and keep as many people as possible within it and keep our attention on the material and the matrix. And if we do have the choice to participate within it or not, they have offered us these experimental jabs to possibly see who would be willing to continue to participate in the matrix or not. What do you think?
I think that, in terms of we had a choice to participate, the soul had a choice. I think I see it a little bit differently. You see, I think I go very much with what the Hermetic text suggests, which is that majority of the souls that you meet here in this realm are the souls from the reincarnation cycle. So they've been here for eons. They've been up and down, up and down. And when you look around the world, guess what? Majority of people have no idea what's going on. You can present them with the facts. You can present them with information. You can, that consciousness is not there. So where is it? It's been through that reincarnation cycle too many times. It's just, you cannot ask someone to get taller. It's just not going to happen, right? So I believe that many here, there's not been any choice made. They literally, they've been here for eons. and then there are other souls. And the funny thing is, because you see, when I do my astrology readings for people, and I do them so that we can basically decode the person as per what the matrix, what cards is the matrix trying to play with you. So I am absolutely not trying to sort of hook anybody into astrology or numerology. I'm very much an advocate of, you know, let's transcend that, let's escape the code, right? Not deliver it. But the point being is that it's very, very clear in some of the parameters. It's just, you have to know what to look at. You can literally, the ancients were able to look at certain parameters that would indicate if the soul is, you know, more advanced, let's say, or perhaps not from that reincarnation cycle. So I call them the outsiders. I call these souls that they would have been the ones who came into this realm from the outside. As in, they are not part of this sort of up and down heaven and earth, but these are the ones that came here on the job. So when you mentioned that we all have a soul purpose and all that, I believe that some of us came here on a job. And you know, literally, when you read some of the ancient texts, when you read when you look through the interpretation of the Sumerian tablets, what these archons, what these beings have been trying to do here for all this time, this is not their first rodeo. They did it before. They did it in other places. They did it in the Orion before they started moving and sort of organizing themselves in different places. So in a way, you know, it seems like some of the people who incarnating right now, they are on a job. They're like a task force. They've done this before somewhere else. And specifically within astrology, there are certain things that show that, I don't want to call it rank, because I don't want to kind of make it into hierarchy, you know, you're better and somebody else is worse. But, you know, let's face it, some of us immediately knew what's going on, right, in the last 4 years, and some people until now have no idea and deny everything. So what's going on, right? Well, where is the missing kind of piece there? And so I believe that some of us, some of the souls that are here right now, they came from the outside. Would they never been present here? Not necessarily. They might have come and go because they knew how to get out of here. Cathars knew how to get out of here. There are certain groups, certain secret societies, they know how to get out of here. The witches, yeah, the ones that got burnt at the stake back in the day, they knew how to get out of here. There are, you know, that wisdom has been also preserved. Native American old wisdom, they knew how to get out of
What
here.
about the other side of that?
So,
Some speculate that there are powerful families and bloodlines that know how to control their reincarnation to where they come back into a very powerful family or bloodline so that they can control things.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes. Because you see, that only confirms that there is a mechanism that can harvest the soul at death. It can literally pull it out as if it was material, right? And it can redirect it or direct it and implement it, place it into whatever body that you want.
Right.
So clearly we're dealing with a very advanced technology that we can't even grasp. Absolutely. I'm absolutely there with you. And they have been doing that. They have been doing that for ages. They have been doing that for a very, very long time. You know, they look at us as ants. They look at us as cockroaches. They despise us. And anyway, in you know, this is where we can enter into the discussion of the reptilian brain, right? Which obviously we have been also tinted with that reptilian brain context in our experience, which is unfortunately where the aggression is coming from, where the kind of domination is coming from, and submission, and, you know, survival of the fittest, and competition, etc., etc. That's not a human experience. This is a reptilian experience. So these, I don't even know what to call them, people or something, you know, showing up in maybe human form, right? Obviously they don't function based on the same values, they don't live in the same way like the sort of normal regular humans, if you like. And of course they would have been very much controlling their own reincarnation process.
Right. Well, let's talk more about what to expect from the end of the world. It's being framed, and it has been for centuries, as the literal end of the world, and it's something that has brought a lot of fear to the collective. But there's a lot of new understandings, and from what you're discussing, that it's something that we should be welcoming.
Absolutely. And you know, I think that obviously there is an agenda going on here, which is to, you know, the more people are scared, the more they can be controlled. So of course that end of the world is going to get a very bad marketing. It's going to get that kind of marketing that's really scary and something to you know, pray to God, right? So that it plays out well for you. Absolutely the opposite. Absolutely the opposite. And you know, the indigenous stories again and the mythology, they tell us exactly what to expect. And I really like the Norse mythology with the end of the world, Ragnarök. Okay, Ragnarök is an old Norse word which very often gets translated incorrectly. It is not, I mean, of course it is a symbolically end of the world, but what it means, this is the doom of the gods. This is the twilight, but very much the doom. This is the end of the gods. This is the end of the world as we know it. This is the end of this world, which is what? Which is the Matrix. That's what it means. And they knew it from the beginning, that their time is limited. The Ragnarok, the end of the world, the apocalypse. Apocalypse means what? The revelation, right? Something is being revealed. Something is coming back. Apocalypse, okay? Ragnarok, doom of the gods. They say doom of the gods and men. Doom of the gods. Doom of the gods and men, as in it is time. You see, the judgment day is not, we're not going to be judged for our sins. We are going to be not even judged, but there's going to be something happening based on that, again, I don't want to call it vibration because it sounds new agey, but there is that consciousness aspect going on here, and it is nothing to do with the mind. You can meditate, you can say affirmations, and it has nothing to do with really truly being there. It has nothing to do with that. So very often you would see the kind of simple people who have no idea about all these pseudo spiritual things, and you know, they are much more advanced and much more connected to in that true spiritual way than a lot of the kind of, you know, people who are all over the internet right now with their spirituality, right? So doom of the gods, what does it look like? The Uroboros, so the zodiac, or the samsara wheel, right, breaks. The end of the zodiac, the end of the Matrix. And then there is a fight. There is the ultimate fight between the gods and Jotun, the giants. Who are the giants? The Titans. Who are the Titans? The original children of Gaia, the earth, and the father sky, right? Uranus. Okay. In Norse mythology, the giants, if you look into the sagas, giants predate the gods, which means giants, Jotun, were the original inhabitants of the earth. And the final battle happens between the gods and the giants. Is that a physical battle? Probably not. Probably not. The battle is about something else, right? The battle is about literally frequencies, vibrations, because this realm has been kept in a very, very low vibrational sort of bandwidth, right? This is why whenever you switch the TV on, it's always dread, gloom, fear, right? Illness, etc., etc. It's never uplifting, it's never promising, it's never inspiring and motivating, because we should always be, you know, living from one day to another, hardly making our ends meet, being traumatized, being scared, etc., and sick. That's how they want us. Why? Because in that particular state, well, guess what? You don't even have the capacity to remember who you are, and you will never be able to connect with that alchemical magic that we are all naturally as humans, as those original humans. We are much more powerful than them. That's the interesting thing. And funny enough, because the medium of our power are feelings, which is what they don't have. And people are looking for, all those third eye sort of abilities and seeing auras and this and that and being able to do all sorts of weird things. That's not they have those abilities too. That's not where your sort of edge lies. Our edge lies in feelings, in the emotions, in ability to feel, which they don't have. And through that feeling, sensation, ability to connect with the earth, ability to feel the energy, they are very in their intellect. They are very much in their mind. That's why, guess what kind of world they are pushing, right? They're pushing AI, they're pushing intelligence, but based on that sort of intellectual function, not the feeling. That's how it's been done for centuries. So the Titans versus the gods is not a physical battle. It is a battle based on Titans bringing back, and we are the Titans, the ones who are here, the ones who feel that there's something going on, the ones who are starting to remember something, right? They're starting to remember their purpose. They're starting to remember that perhaps they came here with a mission. Well, these are the Titans, this is the task force. These are the ones that are here to facilitate these frequency changes into much higher, based on, I don't want to sound new agey. Let's keep it simple. Different kind of world based on compassion, understanding, love, empathy, support, inclusion, and not competition and dominance and aggression. So that's literally, those frequencies are driving the others out.
Yeah, you were
that's
saying that this battle between the Titans or giants and the gods is not going to be a physical battle, more of an energetic. Do you think that's the way it's always been? Even if we look at the Anunnaki mythos, could it be that this was always just happening on an energetic level, and maybe these beings were not necessarily physically here, but interacting in these astral realms with our energetic selves?
That may as well been, because we have lost contact with our multidimensional version, right? So we don't even, for us, this is just very abstract to be even fathoming such things, but may as well be. But there's one more context that we absolutely have to remember, which is the time now is unprecedented. It is unprecedented because there is a reason why all these prophecies, and some of them, they have thousands and thousands of years. These are not prophecies from yesterday. These are prophecies that been told, and there's been verbal accounts of these kept in variety of cultures and also in the ancient texts. As we know, Apocalypse is not the first place where that very prophecy has been captured. It was present before. So all these cultures back in the day, they knew that there will come a time, and that context of a timing was critical, because we as in the earth was going to get support, cosmic support, and as above so below, certain processes were going to start taking place that were not taking place before. So when you ask me that, were these battles physical, I would say that they were physical in the past, but right now, there is no space for physical battle. And you know that because guess what? They're not here. They're not even here. I mean, if you look to the Bible, right? If you look to the ancient text, the extraterrestrials were present here on Earth physically. They were here. I'm not saying all the time, but they were. And they are captured. They are captured in the artwork. They are captured in the mythology, etc. But right now, and of course, we can talk about shape-shifting and all the good stuff, but I'm talking about, you know, the ones that literally are of a different size and they're not here. Why? Because for a very long time, there's been already a shift in energy here in this plane that was nothing to do with what we're doing. It was to do with this cosmic context. They got literally pushed out of here. The only ones that are here, maybe potentially left, are the, you know, the kind of the lowest, the low tier, the bottom of the pyramid, you know, the little, yeah, the newspaper boys of the ones that used to, you know, that used to actually call the shots. So the ones that are here, they mean nothing. They are like rats running from a sinking ship. Am I saying let's do nothing and wait for this to play out? No, that's not what I'm saying, because that's nonsense, okay? And everybody's saying that, you know, waiting for Pleiadians to come and save us or any other nonsense. That's not going to happen. This is very much our job. This is why, you know, some of us know what's going on. This is why some of us are intuitively guided towards certain, you know, taking certain steps, living in a certain way. Some of you, I don't know if people know this show. I can recommend it. There is a show on, I think it's still on Netflix. It's literally called Ragnarök. It's a Norwegian show. It came out, I think, 2 years ago, something like that. It's 3 seasons now. And the first 2 seasons, they kind of came out together. And then we had to wait, I think, 2 years for the last season. And you know, the funny thing is, because a lot of people watched the last season and they got very disappointed. And I don't want to spoil it for everybody. Just please go and watch if you like. But, you know, people got disappointed because the 3rd season was meant to be Ragnarök, right? It was meant to be the final battle. And we were waiting for all this final battle. Did the final battle take place? Well, I will let you watch the show and decide for yourself. What was the final battle?
Interesting.
That's a very interesting take on Ragnarök, which is coming from those that like to, you know, tell us something, right? Because they need to smuggle in the truth with a bit of nonsense. So of course, you know, the gods are portrayed as the good guys and the Jotun, the giants, are portrayed as the bad guys. So there's always an inversion. But, you know, go and see for yourself how Ragnarök plays out. And very deep, very interesting, deep message there.
Now, there are some that are speculating that we are experiencing already profound changes in our reality that can be described as the Mandela effect. And I've even experienced small changes in my daily reality that seemingly weren't like this before.
I think that what we are experiencing is literally collapse of the matrix. You know, even if you look at it in that very AI context, you know, those sort of cubes that this matrix, you know, is built. Like if we look at the movie Matrix or the 13th floor, if anybody watched the 13th floor, it's quite old, right? At some point the guy sort of takes the car and he drives to Hollywood, and literally that's the end of the matrix, right? He literally sees the net at that location. So to me, the glitches in the matrix, the Mandela effect, you know, the fact that people start remembering things differently, the fact that, you know, you're 100% convinced that, you know, for the last 7 days you've gone by a certain place and it looked like that, and today it looks totally different. Like you can cut your arm for that, right? That is, to me, matrix breaking down. These are the glitches in the matrix, which are, and you know, it's more and more of those, because at the end of the world, when I say that the Ouroboros will, or the snake, right, it will bite through its own tail. It is literally so the zodiac, this mechanism, the hold, which is creating this deterministic sort of reality for us that we unwillingly but have to subscribe to, right? Our experience becomes dictated by some kind of code, and to a lesser extent you do have some free will, but a lot of those people, I would call them on autopilot. They have no idea what free will. They just literally, they will deliver whatever is in front of them. But I would say that, some of us who are more aware, we're starting to see patterns, we're starting to see things not quite making sense, and that free will really creeps in there properly, right? And this is how we kind of escape the code, by literally calling the trick of the matrix, right? But I would say absolutely what you say is spot on. The glitches in the matrix, the Mandela effect, yeah, that to me is confirmation that something is really falling apart. And think about it even in the context of the pandemic, right? Well, I'm based in Europe. I'm based in Norway. I come from Poland, and I know that in America, for you guys, the timelines was a little bit different for the restrictions to sort of be taken away and the travel, etc. But for us, I still can't wrap my head around it. That literally 1 month we were this close and expecting digital passports, the vax passports, to be rolled out, and I was preparing that I will never go back to Poland again because I'm not gonna get one, right? And literally overnight, it started from the UK. They dropped everything. And it was massive step backwards from them. Why? What happened? Why did they do that? And of course they're not gonna announce it on TV. They're not gonna say, we had a major something happened, something energetically happened, and basically we failed here. They're not gonna say that. They're not gonna say anything, right? They just did what they did. So looking at the way they are, the sort of the scenario is unfolding, and also, looking to me at, because again, I think what they need, right? They need our attention, because this is how they create whatever they want. It's us actually that create. They cannot create. They tell us, right? And then it really makes me laugh when all these people on TikTok are, showing all these Simpson movies and all that. The Simpson movies that never existed. This is part of the controlled opposition creating those, creating the memes and everything. And what they want to happen, they put in front of us, in front of our noses, and we deliver that for them. So I always say, why don't you stop looking? Why don't you just stop engaging with this world? Why do you need to engage with this fake, illusionary world? Why don't you start just focusing on yourself and the real world, the Pandora, the avatar's Pandora that's out there, where we were living in a communion, and it was like an ecosystem, right? The connection between the planet and between the people, and there was no money, there was no taxes, there was no systems, and everybody was happy, right? I'm not talking about going back to sleeping on trees, but I'm just saying that there is another way, right? Everybody's talking about Matrix, the movie, being a documentary. I'm arguing that Avatar, the movie, that's, especially the first part, I haven't watched anything else, just watched the first part. That's a documentary of what happened here. Of course, in an inverted versions, right, with the humans attacking. But that's what happened here. So why can't we go back to that? Let's flag out of the matrix, as in, let's stop looking and getting angry at Facebook. Let's stop arguing with fellow awakened or unawakened or whatever, that we know better, they know better. Just leave it. Let's just leave it. And all of us, especially if you are the ones who claim to be aware and awakened, then why do you get pulled into all that nonsense?
I love it. That is a great note to end on. Ola, thank you so much. This was awesome. And we'll definitely have to do this again. There's much more that we could discuss. Before we close out, let everyone know how they can find out about you and some of the amazing cosmic wisdom that you're offering online.
So I can be found through two websites. They sort of focus on slightly different things. My first website, selfmasteryquest.com. So there you can contact me if you would like to dive into your code, astrology, numerology. So we can look into that. We can look into basically what kind of cards the matrix has dealt you, and how to best stop falling for the code. So how to escape, how to transcend. And the other website, Mystical Arctic Journeys. So of course, this is my way of inviting everybody to come to this absolutely breathtaking, spectacular, transformational region full of primordial energy. You know, you have to be here. I cannot describe it. I tried many times and failed. When people come, it's a totally different experience. So I have now opened up to a sort of possibility of people coming, you know, as a couple, individually, as a group of friends, or in whatever other capacity. So I can be your guide. It is not going to be a tourist experience. It is going to be, you know, this kind of experience like we've had over the past hour here. So we're gonna be, you know, it's gonna be a real talk in a context of mythology, in a context of ancient wisdom, and I will take you to certain places that are going to blow your mind around here. And I can guarantee you, if you are ready for this kind of energy and to transform your life, this is the place.
That's awesome. Ola, thank you so much. Like I said, we'll definitely do this again. And until next time, everyone, have a wonderful evening. We will be talking again tomorrow. We'll see y'all then.